in the universe, and in my life, God. Today's affirmation is one of the 5 basic principles of unity. Embracing this principle defines our purpose as spiritual beings in human form. If fear-based judgments cloud my expanding awareness of spiritual truth, I affirm this principle, then remind myself of Jesus' words, "Judge not." Compassion is the spiritual energy that dissolves the negative effects of judgment. When I reflect on the conflicts of this world, I learn from the consequences of judging others. I appreciate the rich diversity of this mortal realm. Without insisting on either superiority or conformity, by making loving choices in my life, I honor and recognize my oneness with all beings. And from 1 John chapter 4, verse 7, "Beloved, let us love one another, because love is from God. Everyone who loves is born of God and knows God." And that ends this word for today.
Now we find ourselves in the silence. And we take ourselves to the beach. A favorite place. You climb out of your car. Take your shoes off. And you find yourself walking through the sand. There is that feeling that you're part of the sand. And you continue walking down, and you get to the edge. Off in the distance, you see a bench. And you walk along. You pick up a seashell. And you hold it to your ear. And you hear the sound of the sea. And you continue to walk. Soft breeze blowing. And you take a breath. Breathing in God. You hear the birds. The seagulls, and you get to the bench, and you sit on it, and it's just at the edge of the water, and you feel the water, the warm water lapping at your feet. Soothing your soul. And so you sit there a while in the silence. And as you sit there, Your eyes are closed, but you sense somebody has sat down beside you. So you open your eyes and you look. There's no one there. But you know the presence is there. You feel it. And as you sit there, you'll feel this warm, enveloping love surround you. You feel it floating through you. You become one with it. The warmth of the water continues, soothing your feet, bringing back wonderful memories. And so you get up. And you continue walking. But the presence is always there with you. You feel it walking with you. You stumble, and a hand comes out. Takes your arm. You know that you are supported. You know there's nothing to fear. And those burdens that you had come to the beach about, they're gone. You think to yourself, where did they go? And then a wind comes and swirls around you. And then you know that those gardens, those burdens, have been swept away with God's love. And you know that that peace and that love you feel now, you'll never lose. You are one with that. And you know, deep down in your heart and in your mind, there is nothing to fear. That God, divine source, is always with you, ever present, ever loving. And suddenly you find yourself back at the entrance to where you left your car. So you open your eyes and joyfully, with peace in your heart, return to that everyday life. And so it is. Wow, that was powerful. I had to get up and join you all. It was very powerful. Thank you. Thank you, Mike. Well, do you know Jonah? I know I do. When I was looking for a message on my trip this year, I was being told what I needed to talk about. It was sort of vague. So I asked for some help. And I was led to this book. It's a book by Rocco Errico about Let There Be Light. It's the 7 keys to reading the Bible from a cultural understanding of the language, the times, and the Near East. When I opened it up, there was Jonah waiting for me. And we know Jonah. He's the guy, I'm sure you're saying I know him too. He's the guy that, said no to God. I'm not doing what you want me to do. Went, ran away, hopped on a ship, going to Tarshish, which we now know is Spain. Landed in the boat, got caught in a storm. The sailors got scared. They threw him overboard. Their choice, but they threw him overboard. And suddenly, where was he? He got swept up by a giant fish. Now we know we call it a whale, but in the Bible it says a giant fish. And I can only imagine how smelly it had to have been, staying in that belly of that fish for 3 days and 3 nights. I'm sure that he was looking to get out of his clothes very soon after that. I want to share a little history with you about Jonah. The name Jonah means dove. And from what I read in the Bible about Jonah, he was not a dove. He certainly was not. He was not a prophet that went along with smoothing everybody out. He liked to sort of rock the boat. Now, according to the Near Eastern interpretation of the fish in the boat and everything, it says a fish symbolizes trouble and sorrow. Now, to be in a fish, as Jonah was, is a Semitic idiom and means to be in a quandary or a dilemma. Even to this day, people in the Near East will often say someone is in the bottom of the sea. We say he's in over his head, he's in hot water, in a pickle, in a jam. But Jonah definitely was in over his head. He had chosen the wrong way to go. His decision had been His decision had been based on, I think, anger. And nobody's telling me what to do. But Jonah is a symbol of our humanness. And I was talking about this message with my friend who said, Mary, think about it. We are all Jonah at some point in time, probably every day. And I did think about it, and she was right. I know I am a Jonah at times. How many times during the day have you found yourself having to make a choice? Think about it. We wake up in the morning, we have to decide whether we're going to get up out of bed, or maybe stay in bed a few more minutes to get that sleep in before we have to get up. Then we have to decide what we're going to wear. Then comes breakfast. Should I have eggs or cereal, coffee or tea? The choices go on. And again, it's about decisions. And at the end of the day, you've made a lot of decisions, whether you realize it or not. What about the major decisions, though? Those are easy ones that we get through the day with. What about those that are a burden, that are taking over you, that we are spending a lot of time on, that we become lost in, and we forget about who we are? Do we become Jonah? Do we stick our head in the sand, hoping that it will go away if I stay down here long enough? I have to admit, I've been there. I've stuck my head in the sand. When I made a decision to become an L.U.T, I really found myself asking, do I really want to do this? Maybe I'll just ignore it and it'll go away. But it did not go away, and it started to eat at me. And so I had to take my head out of the sand and make a decision. The question, though, is how do we know that what we chose to do will be the right decision? We lose track of the actual choices that we make every day. And can we always know what is right? And can we find peace in the choices we make? I would like to share a little bit with you about choices. My husband and I took a trip across the United States through this beautiful country of ours in the months of June and July. It was very hot. The first 8 days it rained, and the rest of the days we couldn't even sit outside. We couldn't have a meal outside. And when we were in Las Vegas, it was 119 degrees the day we were getting ready to leave. And we looked at each other and said, this is the wrong decision. It was, for sure. So again, it's about choice and decisions and what the ultimate end is to it. On that trip, we were traveling through to Yosemite, and we were on many roads, and my husband loved Jill. I'm sure many of you know who Jill is, or you might have a bill. That's the GPS, the Garmin that's in the Jill would say, take exit A. Now, I grew up the old-fashioned way. I had my map in my hand, my pencil and my compass, and I would say that is not the right exit to take. But he thought Jill knew better than I did. Or he just trusted a machine, actually. So, of course, we ended up going the wrong way. So I got upgraded to chief navigator. I learned, though, through this adventure, this experience, that the power of choosing has many complex layers. And these same layers exist in all our choices, our everyday choices and our big choices. So for a moment, think about a decision you need to make. Are you feeling overwhelmed? Stressed out? Feeling a rising tide of panic? Of I can't decide? I'm sure you have. We're only human. We're Jonah. So we need to change our thinking, going from that place of fear and indecision. And we need to see these choices as gifts from God. I know, I can hear you thinking. She has no idea what she's talking about. She has no idea of the dilemma I'm in, or what I'm going through. However, I know that feeling too, as I've shared with you. I've been there. But in the process, I learned a valuable lesson. That in the choosing, it was a gift from God. It was will, that button that Barbara talked about pushing. I do know that all of us have been endowed by God with free will, creativity, imagination, understanding, but most important, faith. Where would we be without our faith? With these gifts, we have the ability and the capability to choose our response to the situation. Are we going to stick our head in the sand? Or are we going to find options and alternatives? Now remember last week, if you were here, Lou spoke of Unity's third principle. What we think, we create. So if we are creating fear and quandary and sorrow, that's what we're going to create. So we need to change that around. We need to create in a positive manner. So how can we do this? We start with Unity's principle number 4, which is affirmative, positive prayer. Affirming that the need is already met. The next step is to identify the decision that needs to be made. And you have to be clear with what it is. But you have to be honest with yourself. I had to be honest about my decision about becoming an L.U.T. What was driving me? Was it me and my ego? Or was it the Spirit of God talking to me? Then make a list of all your options, your alternatives, those available, and even those we think are not available. Because again, we created that thought of lack. Do not second guess yourself. Do not find yourself being pushed into a decision you don't think is the right one. Don't be bullied. You can say no, not now. The truth is, we have a built-in God to help us. To help us in making that choice. Even that choice of whether to stay in bed or not for those few minutes. That help is God. And God goes by many names. Intuition, conscience, that still small voice, and even that well-known gut feeling. How many have you said, times have you said, I know in my gut this is not the right thing? Now, on this trip, I know and knew at the time that being upgraded to the chief navigator position, I was going to be having to make choices. And I would have to make sure that we took the right exit and not the wrong exit that would take us in the wrong direction. And I do have to admit that at times there was a wrong choice. And words were and I found myself affirming often out loud and in my mind that God was in charge. Especially when we were on some mountain roads. There was one in particular I remember. We were south of Yosemite National Park. And we were going along. There were no guardrails. There were those long sheer drops. And at times, the curve was so bad that I thought we were coming back towards each other, towards ourselves. It was a very unusual road. And so I would recommend, don't ever use Highway 49 and stuff. So I remembered then that God had a plan. It was already in place for my life and your life. It's already in place. It's a divine plan. And God really allows us to deviate. But sometimes I can hear him upstairs laughing at me and saying, Mary, not the right decision, you know. Let me go ahead and make it anyway. No. You are in the presence of God at all times. We know God is ever present. God is in and through everything. We know God has the understanding, the insight, and most important, that still small voice that speaks in our ear, guiding us to make good choices. Choices that are in harmony with your divine plan and my divine plan. As a child of God, he's already put this into place for us because he cares about us. In Matthew chapter 17, verse 20, Matthew writes, truly I tell you, if you have faith the size of a mustard seed, you will say to the mountain, move from here to there, and it will move, and nothing will be impossible for you. Affirm every day, I can do all things, make the right decision, and do all the things that I need to do. You can make the right choice, just as Jonah did. Now, I'd like you to take just a minute, well, a few minutes. And I'd like you to close your eyes, gently. Relax, breathe. I know you've been sitting in that chair a while. See if you can get comfortable. And now, thank God. For a minute, let yourself be in the presence of God. feel the love, the peace, and see the light at the end of the dark tunnel. Be in the presence of God now, not with your problem, but with your entire self, your entire being. If the problem thought returns, sit in the silence. Think of the divine that is in and through your problem and through your choice. And let the feeling of God's presence touch you. Touch your soul. Feel it within you and around you, that enveloping love. The presence of God is light, and you live in that light, in the love and the understanding. And you know that thought problem is going to resurface. And as you quiet your thoughts, and that inner voice that is always talking, always interrupting, always negating, return to your prayer time. Listen to that still, small voice, God's voice, like the sound in the seashell. Really listen to what God is saying. The answer will come. Will it come this minute? Maybe. Maybe not. But by clearing yourself of any thought, of any feeling other than God, you are clearing the way for the answer from God. Remember, there is a light at the end of the dark tunnel. There is a light for your way through the darkness. And that light radiates from you, from within you, from your soul. And it guides you along with God's voice. Remember, do not be afraid of the darkness, or of your choice, or of your decisions. Be with God. Be in your faith. And affirm, I can do all things, for I am a child of God. And so it is. Namaste.